2007, Rob Zombie would famously take on the task of remaking John Carpenter's iconic classic, Halloween. And ever since then, the two have had quite a few dust-ups. With this making the news again recently, I decided it's time to talk about it.
We stopped at a light and saw him walking in that field behind the Lost River Drive-In. Julie said he was so creepy.
Hey, what is up everybody? Nick here, and today I want to talk to you guys about the ongoing feud between John Carpenter and Rob Zombie. Now this has been making headlines again, and I've seen some of my mutual friends here on YouTube talk about it, so I thought it was time that I threw my hat in the ring, gave my opinion on what I think is actually happening here. Now, this history between the two of them is actually not as large as some might think. As you know, in 2006, Rob Zombie got hired to direct Halloween, a remake of John Carpenter's original film. And at the time, Carpenter stated that he told Rob Zombie in a phone call, "Hey man, good luck, make it your own." Now, I just want to say really quickly, that does kind of sound like Carpenter because he really doesn't care if people make sequels or remakes to his projects, because Carpenter famously doesn't like to make sequels. He usually makes something and then he's like, I'm done. I don't want to come back for another one. Leave me alone. If you want to make a sequel, just pay me the check, but I'm good. So at the time I was like, yeah, that makes sense. But later, Rob Zombie actually had a different account for how that phone call actually went. Rob said that John was very cold and dismissive to him about being hired to remake Halloween, and Rob Zombie made that public. And John Carpenter was not happy about that.
I called him up, and the conversation pretty much went exactly like this. I was like, hey, John, it's Rob. Hey, just want to tell you I'm doing a remake of Halloween. And then there's like a weird silence that goes, so what do you want me to say? You know, I don't want you to say anything. I just wanted to tell you. It was okay. Have fun with it.
I just want to say here, John's response is totally fair if that is the case. If John actually was very much like, hey, do your own thing, good luck to you, and Rob said the opposite, I'd be pissed off too. It would seem like you're trying to drag somebody's name through the mud.
Anyway, they interviewed him on that biography and channel, and he lied about me. He said I was very cold to him when he told me I was going to, and that he was going to make it. Nothing could be further from the truth. I said, make it your own movie, man. You know, this is yours now. Don't worry about me. I was incredibly supportive. Why that piece of shit lied, I don't know.
But if I'm not mistaken, I think I remember back in the 2007-2008 days, Rob Zombie did not initially say that John was dismissive about him being hired to direct Halloween. Maybe dismissive in the sense that he didn't care, but I don't think he came across as an asshole to Rob at all, and I think that's from Rob's own telling at the time. Then years later, Rob Zombie would kind of reignite the feud, basically saying that he didn't care whether or not John approved of him making the film or not, and he was going to do his own thing and put his own stamp on it. And now I just want to say, reading that statement from Rob, that doesn't seem like that is a slight at John Carpenter. That seems more so like Rob is like, I don't really care whether somebody likes or approves of what I'm doing is irrelevant. I got hired to do it. I have a passion for doing it. I want to do it and make my own thing. Now, John Carpenter has said, even after they initially buried the hatchet, that he didn't really like what Rob did with the movie. He didn't like expanding upon Michael Myers' backstory, and he thought that Michael Myers was too tall. He felt like Rob Zombie stripped away some of the mystique of Michael Myers. Now, these statements came out not long after one another, so it seems like they were again fueling each other's fire. Well, recently John Carpenter gave another statement on Rob Zombie's Halloween movies, and this is what he had to say.
I don't want to talk down about other directors if I possibly can, except Rob Zombie. I'll be glad to talk down about.
Yeah, that's...
Now, I will say that's actually pretty tame for Carpenter, especially if he apparently hates Rob Zombie and is very cold and dismissive to him. That more seems like he's kind of being tongue-in-cheek, but he's just very dismissive of the film Rob made. That doesn't seem like a personal attack. Now, Rob has not responded to this because Rob keeps a pretty low profile these days, aside from doing music and touring. He's not really doing anything else in the entertainment industry right now. So I doubt we're even going to hear Rob touch this. But where does this leave us, and why is this a thing? Look, clearly wires got crossed here at some point. One of the two is misrepresenting how that initial conversation went. Now, I know the impulse for a lot of OG fans is going to be to side with John Carpenter and believe that Rob Zombie is the one lying here for clout, attention, whatever it might be. That would just seem likely, right? But actually, I think there's truth in both of their statements. See, based off of what I remember from that time, I do believe that John is telling the truth, that he was very much like, hey, whatever, I don't care, have at it. I also believe that Rob Zombie took that as being cold and dismissive. I don't really think that was John's intent. I mean, obviously I can't speak for him, but I think it was more so like, what do I care? They're going to give me a check anyway. This was going to get remade again eventually anyway, so whatever. Have at it. Good luck to you. And I think Rob took that the wrong way and maybe got personally offended, which makes sense because he's a huge fan of the original Halloween and presumably a huge fan of John Carpenter. So I'm sure he was hoping in his heart of hearts that John Carpenter was going to be like, dude, that's awesome. Let me know if I can help you in any way possible. But that's just not John Carpenter. John Carpenter very much does not give a shit about that stuff. And I don't really blame him. He said what he had to say with Halloween. He came back for Halloween 2 as a writer because he was basically forced to. He didn't want to do that. His involvement in Halloween 3 was not forcible because he wanted to tell new stories, make it an anthology. And when it became clear that that was not going to be the path forward for the Halloween franchise, he was out. Now, famously, John had dabbled in the idea of coming back again and again for a lot of money, and it never happened. So that really seemed more like it was about a payday and not a passion for Halloween as a franchise. I also think that there is truth to what Rob said years later when he said, I don't really care whether someone approves or not. I'm just going to make what I'm going to make. I'm going to put my stamp on it, and that is what it is. I don't think that was a slight at John Carpenter. I really don't. And I know some people at the time read that as such, but I felt like that was just Rob being Rob. Rob very much is a lot like John Carpenter. I think that's why they butt heads, because they're very similar. Rob was like, whatever, dude. This is my movie. I'm making it. You like it. You don't. I really don't give a shit. I think John Carpenter's critique of Rob Zombie's Halloween is very fair, because as the person that created that franchise, I'm sure he feels we didn't need to do all this. This is doing too much for Halloween. I personally would not have done that because I didn't do that 30 years ago at the time. So I don't think that was a slight at Rob Zombie. I think it was more so just like, I don't know about this decision, but whatever, it's your thing. It doesn't tarnish my thing whatsoever. I think this is a case of the two misinterpreting each other. I think this is a case of the two not actually talking one-on-one and sorting this out. They're reading headlines or they're watching a snippet of a clip and they're thinking that the other is attacking the other. Now, John did years ago tweet that, oh, hey, we buried the hatchet and everything's good. And they come to find out years later, it's not good, apparently, according to John and how he feels today about Rob Zombie. And that's kind of weird because since then, Rob hasn't said or done anything that would have ruffled John's feathers. I think that John Carpenter is playing into this more now as he gets older and as time goes on, because I think he's reading the temperature of the room. He knows there is a loud section of the fan base that hates Rob Zombie's films, and it is probably the majority. I wouldn't say it's an 80-20 majority, but it's probably a 60-40 majority, and I think he knows that, and he plays into it now. Rather than personally attacking Rob, he just likes to take a dump on Rob's movies whenever he gets a chance to. He likes to get a rise out of the crowd. He knows, I think, that Rob's not going to fire back at this point, and to John's credit, he's not making it personal, but I think he's playing into it. Do I think that John Carpenter likes Rob Zombie's Halloween? No, he doesn't. But guess what? John Carpenter doesn't like any Halloween movie after the original. He famously hates Halloween 2, and everybody says, oh, that's the best sequel. Yeah, he hates it. He thinks it's a piece of garbage. So I don't think he does like it. He's not lying there. Do I think he actually has a personal problem with Rob? I think he did initially when Rob made that first statement about the phone call because John probably felt like he was attacking him. But once they buried the hatchet there, no, I don't think he has a personal problem with him whatsoever. I think he's just playing into it. John is a showman. And I know that's crazy to say because John Carpenter is very much like a hermit and he's like a crotchety old man. And I say that in a loving way. But honestly, so is Rob. I think both of them are super similar in that way. Rob genuinely doesn't care whether or not somebody likes one of his movies or his albums. He doesn't. He's going to make it, he's going to put it out there, and then he's going to walk away from it. It's like pulling the pin on a grenade and leaving the room. Whatever happens, happens. I did that. It is what it is. I'm moving on. Both of these guys are very much like that. But I think they both have egos. As much as they seem like they don't care, they both have egos. Now, I mean, I think that's fair. They both have done a lot of successful things in their careers, whether that be in film or music. They're both very successful people. So you got to have a little bit of an ego to get that successful in this industry. But I don't actually think there's a real quarrel or a feud here anymore. I think it's more just, this is going to rile up the fans, so let's do it. I think it's just more that John knows it's going to rile people up and it's going to make people make content like this video you're watching right now. But I don't think he thinks about Rob Zombie at all. I don't think when he lays down at night, he's like, I wonder what Rob thinks of me. No, he doesn't care. And I'm sure Rob is literally the exact same way. And regardless, whatever era of Halloween fan you are, whether or not you love what Rob did with Halloween, I think that's all largely irrelevant. I think at this point, these days, this is just a story for clickbait. But it's still fun to talk about because it is crazy to see how these two have gone at each other for over a decade now, time and time again in the media. And it's like, can you guys just get in a room and like talk about it? Because I actually think you'd find a lot in common with each other. And I don't think you actually have problems with each other. But I don't know. I'm sure some old school Halloween fans that hate Rob Zombie's movies love this. And they're like, yes, John, double down. And I'm sure there's people from my generation where Rob Zombie's Halloween was the first one you saw in theaters where you're kind of like, oh, come on, John. Like, this is beneath you. What do you guys think? Do you think that John Carpenter actually hates Rob Zombie? Or do you agree with me and you think that at this point he's just kind of playing into it? He doesn't like the movie, but he doesn't have an issue with Rob. Or do you think that Rob has an issue with John? Or do you think that, like I do, Rob is just playing into it as well and genuinely doesn't care either way? Whatever you think, please comment down below in the comments section. I want to thank you guys so much for watching the video. Make sure to leave a like on it, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. This is Nick at the Lost River Drive-In, and I'm pulling out.